Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Baseball is a game full of complex numbers that can evaluate player performance. Even with all of them, it's still a game where it's hard to rank players. There's almost no factual way to do it after taking every statistic into account. But what we're gonna do here is try. Kinda. We're gonna act like we're scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the all-time player rankings. Like way, way, way down to the bottom. But you can't go all the way down the WAR leaderboard. They won't let you do that, unfortunately. Well over 20,000 people have played Major League Baseball. We're here to find the very worst one. Statistically, at least. Like a real-life Bucky McBadbat. We've done some research and have found a short list of the worst performing baseball players in history, building up to who put up unbelievably low lows on the field. And to do that, we're gonna start by giving you guys better than that guy. 2021 Domingo Leyba, Bartolo Colon only as a hitter, Mike Trout. Oh wait, we're moving in the wrong direction now. We're going to be showing you other guys first, just to put it into perspective how unbelievably terrible the worst player we could find was. Oh, by the way, yeah, the worst guy we could find has a lower career offensive WAR than Bartolo Colon. Hope that guy could at least keep his helmet on. In order to understand why that's so bad, and why we're about to call these players some of the worst of the worst, let's talk about a couple stats that we're going to be leaning heavy on in this video. If you're one of those big-time baseball minds who thinks they know everything there is to know, you can skip this chapter where we explain some stats. WAR stands for wins above replacement, and we just mentioned it a couple seconds ago, so I hope you remember it. What it measures is a player's overall contribution towards their team winning. The above replacement part means how many more games would a team win with this guy instead of if you pulled up a generic minor league player who plays the same position. So, a replacement. All these guys we're going to talk about are worse than those generic replacements. It's close to a number that encompasses everything a player does, but it's not perfect. The other big one we're going to use in this video is WRC+, which is short for weighted runs created, plus. Thought I was going to forget about that part, didn't you? Runs are how you score in baseball, and good players are responsible for creating runs. This stat measures their ability to do that, putting every hitter on a scale where 100 is always average, and factors in those weird stadiums too, to come up with an estimate of one final hitting number. All these guys have WRC pluses way worse than 100. Alright, now that that's out of the way, you guys want to see the worst pitcher ever to step on an MLB mound? This is John Coleman. He was actually a two-way player, and an average hitter with a 100 career WRC plus and 3.3 batting WAR. But he pitched too, and was terrible at it. His rookie year, he gave up 772 hits. 772! He has almost every bad counting stat record in that season, and he just kept going out there and getting blasted.
All I know is he never had the makings of a varsity athlete.
It's crazy because his earned run average isn't even that bad, but every time he went out there, he was good to totally get crushed. To the point where his career pitching WAR was negative 4.4. A literal replacement pitcher would have gotten John's teams 4 more wins instead of him. Pitchers have a stat called ERA+, that's like their version of WRC+. He pitched in 842 big league innings, and his career ERA+ was 67. And let me tell you, he was the best player we're going to talk about in this build up to the worst overall guy. It goes downhill from here, believe it or not. I'm pretty tempted to just flat out say that this next guy is the worst defensive player in baseball ever. Dan Meyer was a bad hitter. His 82 WRC+ says so. But he had multiple seasons with above average WRC pluses. So what makes him so... Oh... yeah, that's gotta be it. Sometimes there are guys who can be pretty good hitters that get ruined by bad defense. Lucas Duda comes to mind as a guy with potential 30 home run power every season, but defense that was, less than ideal. Pedro Guerrero would have been a borderline Hall of Famer if he could have just survived in the field, but his defensive WAR killed any chance of that. I think I'm gonna comfortably say that Meyer was even shakier out there though. If he had played as long as Guerrero with his defensive pace, his cumulative numbers would have been just as bad. A lot of errors in the outfield will do that to you. Speaking of errors, Andres Thomas combined really bad defense with somehow even worse offense. An everyday shortstop for the Braves in the 1980s, Thomas was just about half as good as an average hitter in his career and lasted 6 seasons with the Braves. Half as good as an average hitter. He wasn't a good base stealer. He was consistently towards the top of the league in errors. His defensive WAR was, not good. His offensive WAR was even lower. That's really bad if you haven't figured that out. Apparently, he was such a bad hitter that his sadly short Wikipedia page mentions that announcers openly asked why any pitcher would even bother throwing him a strike, because he was probably going to swing and miss in a bad pitch anyway. Doug Flynn was a pretty good defender who won a Gold Glove award in 1980, and he once hit 3 triples in a game. For a Gold Glove winner to be here, that means his hitting had to be really bad. And yeah, it was. The best he could ever do in his 11-year career was 14% below average by WRC+. Not one of his career batting average, on-base percentage, or slugging percentage were over 300. Basketball has triple doubles. Baseball has triple 200s, I guess. Flynn also got caught stealing as much as he pulled it off. His negative 6.9 WAR is tied for the lowest we could find on Baseball Reference, with the worst player ever. Doug had negative 8.3 wins above replacement on the site Fangraphs, which puts in slightly different variables to determine player value. Both have their own benefits, but this worst guy was really, really bad.
The numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for you.
Doug Flynn at least got invited back to Shea Stadium for its closing ceremony. This guy, well, he was not good enough for anything like that. Bill Bergen is the worst performing player in MLB history. He played from 1901 to 1911 for the Reds and the Dodgers. His career WRC plus was 22. 22! He failed to get on base 20% of the time in a sport where there are guys who will more than double that. He never even had a season half as productive as an average hitter. His batting average was under 170 5 times. He set a record for most at-bats in a row without a hit that lasted for over 100 years. And it's not like he could hit for any power either. ISO is the difference between a player's batting average and slugging percentage. You have to squint really hard to see his. Jeff Mathis is the closest kind of guy to this in baseball today, and he's still a much better hitter than Bill Bergen. If Doug Flynn was a triple 200 guy, Bill Bergen was barely, and I mean barely, a single 200 guy. He couldn't hit, he couldn't run, and he couldn't walk. And he was never once hit by a pitch in well over 3,000 times in the batter's box. Couldn't even take one for the team, eh? You name it, he was bad at it. Almost. You want to know something? He was a really good defensive catcher. His career defensive WAR on Baseball Reference was 14.6, about the same as Salvador Perez's right now. No catcher in baseball today, other than Yadier Molina, the best defensive catcher ever, truly has him beat. Bill's hitting was so bad that it looked to not even matter, but that sets up a point I've been waiting all video to make. Just because you had the worst stats doesn't mean you had no value. Bill Bergen proved that. 5 Points of Ids, a friend of the show here, tweeted that his dad used to say, "You have to be really good to be really bad." Sounds like a riddle at first glance, so let me break that down. Teams aren't gonna play guys, let alone have guys, who are just awful at everything. Every single player, every one of them that we've mentioned in the entire video had something of value to provide for their team. Even the worst players ever have some qualities or talents that got them there. John Coleman was a two-way player who could hit a little bit. Dan Meyer was an average big league hitter in multiple seasons. Andres Thomas actually had above average home run totals for shortstops in his time. Doug Flynn was a Gold Glove caliber second baseman. And Bill Bergen was a really solid defensive catcher. Probably even one of the best defensive catchers ever. That's why I hate it when random people at like Arby's say, "Oh, I could be a big league player, you know." No, you couldn't. Pro athletes are pro athletes for a reason. They got there because they were really good at something. They wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to be a pro athlete otherwise. And if you've noticed, every guy we've talked about played for a few seasons. They stuck around because they had some promise. something going for them, some faith given to them by their teams. Because you can't truly be really bad without being really good first. Why do you think Albert Pujols is still playing baseball? Why do you think Chris Davis hit 168 on an $161 million contract? Because both of those guys were really good at baseball first. They wouldn't have even gotten the opportunity without doing something right. And that's what matters. Stats aren't everything. They're a tool. They're a really valuable tool, but they're information. Stats also aren't always one size fits all. They're a necessary resource, and we're always going to use them because they're important and they tell stories, like this one. But we can't let ourselves become a Wall-E society. This is coming from someone who loves and knows a lot about baseball stats. Too much, as a matter of fact. Let Bill Bergen, the worst player in baseball history, teach you a lesson. That everyone has something they bring. You have it in you to do what you want to do. Everyone has value. Everyone's important. To their friends, to their family, and to the world.